Good evening. Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Lee Hammer. I'm the program director of KGO, and welcome to our All Star Debate. If you've been a regular listener to, thank you. If you've been a regular listener to KGO over the years, you know we've had these in prior years, and they kind of stopped for a couple of years. But in talking to our staff and talking to our on-air talent, they said we need to get these going again, so we're doing this. So this is the first one tonight. By a show of hands or a round of applause, we're thinking of doing maybe 2 or 3 more next year. Should we do this next year? Would you come next year? Would you pay more next year? Oh, that wasn't the response I was hoping for. I had 2 highs in a row, and I didn't get that third one. Darn it. Emily, tell Doug he doesn't want to raise the price. All right. We had a very busy day on KGO yesterday with the fires and everything up there. And I want to commend, how many of you listened to our coverage yesterday? Thanks. I want to commend, we had Brett Burkhart, Pat Thurston came in on a Sunday, John Rothman came in, Kim McAllister went out. So we'll thank them here in a second for everything they did. Do we have any people here that were evacuated from their homes yesterday? Really? And you're self-evacuated, and you didn't lose your home or anything, did you? No, so good. Okay. Well, we're saying prayers for everybody up there that that no one has lost their life or have anything go wrong. So thank you very much. PG&E is one of the topics we'll be talking about tonight. And when I was downstairs, I asked some people other things to talk about. Someone said, "You want to talk politics?" Is that right? The name Trump came up and impeachment came up. I don't know. You guys ready to talk about that stuff? We'll see what happens. Anyway, you talk about experience. I'm going to introduce our staff here in a second, but our talent up here tonight has a combined 271 years of talk radio experience. Now, it is not confirmed, but I believe John Rothman has about 112 of those. So we'll find out when he gets up here. Anyway, we'll talk a lot about that. So without further ado, let's introduce the panel for tonight. And we're going to go in order as the shows go. So starting first, a 6'1" running back. No, they're just joking. From the morning show, 6 to 10 on KGO, it is Jack Armstrong. And his partner, Joe Getty. Up next, holding down the 10 a.m. to noon spot, Mr. Mark Thompson. Mark will win the award tonight for Best Dressed, so he gets an extra bottle of Pellegrino right here. Up next, from noon to 3, we have Miss Pat Thurston. Oh, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. is Mr. Chip Franklin. Six p.m. to 9 p.m., the guy who has 108 years experience, John Rothman. But the guy with the real most experience up here, a member of the National Radio Hall of Fame. He has a studio named after him at KGO, and he's the veteran. He's the guy that, we all aspire to be, Mr. Ron Owens. A standing ovation. Wow. Okay, hold on. The best is... Don't worry, we saved the best for last, right? All right, that's why these guys are up here first. Your moderators for tonight, as we get Ron settled in, our moderators for tonight, doing the morning news, is Mr. Brett Burkhart. And as we said, Chip's partner, saving the best for last, Miss Nikki Maduro. So enough of me. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for attending. We'll see you next year with higher prices. And I now turn the microphone over to Brett and Nikki. Enjoy your time and have a great time. Thank you, everybody.
So great. Thank you, Lee Hammer.
Shouldn't we first thank P&G for allowing us to have light tonight?
Can you believe
Yes, thank you,
Thank you, PG&E. Thank you so much for allowing us to have electricity tonight. We're so grateful.
We should be grateful, Jack. Thank you. Thank you.
Nikki and I are extremely honored to be working with the best crew in the country when it comes to radio.
Yes, indeed.
But I must say that it's not just radio, it's the way they disseminate critical news and information and offer an opinion occasionally here and there.
And also allowing all of you to weigh in, because especially when we're experiencing something like another power outage, you want to hear what's happening in your neighborhood, and then you also want to hear what everyone else is going through.
Right.
Because that's how we get, donations for clothing. Where can we stay? What can we do? It's all of you. That's what makes the difference.
That's it. They come from vast, differently
backgrounds.
CIA, we got comedian.
No.
We got
Let's get it right. Secret
Nixon
Service.
White House.
I am not.
We got an alpaca farmer.
Service. Brett.
Deep state.
We got our Hollywood celebrity here. This is fantastic.
Absolutely.
And it's why they have been honored by their peers over the years. And it's no wonder because of their vast background. And it's why they bring this amazing perspective to the radio every day. And it may change your opinion occasionally. Or maybe it makes you see one side of the debate that you don't normally see. Or if they're doing it right, maybe it changes policy. Maybe it gives a voice to the voiceless and rights a wrong. And there's another side of the equation, and that is you, as Nikki was saying.
Absolutely.
This is where your life experiences come to the table with your perspective. And maybe you change an opinion here.
Absolutely.
Maybe you change your mind here more than they care to admit it. Right?
He's pointing at you, Chip. Do you see how he's constantly pointing at you? There you go.
KGO is about the community. It doesn't just talk to the community, it's talking with the community. And that's why we are here tonight on one stage for the KGO All Star Debate for 2020.
Exactly.
Next year's election. So let's give a round of applause to her.
Thank you all for coming out today. All right, you ready to get to it?
Let's do it.
All right.
One thing.
Yes, Ron.
Lee had a little trouble when he was talking, do we want it next year? Let me phrase it the right way. Do you want to have it the next time that Trump is reelected? Joe and Jack. Joe and Jack just told me that, so I figured.
You never know what can happen.
Right in with the Trump stuff, huh?
You never know. We'll get to Trump.
Not even a warm-up. Just right in with the Trump.
There's Marky.
Trump who?
I know, right? Who? All right, we'll get to Trump. But let's first start off, obviously the biggest topic of the day is PG&E. So I'm going to open it up. People are losing their homes. But not only their homes, their income. I had people, and you'll notice that we had a sold out event today, but there's some empty seats here. People have been calling us all day saying, I have no power. I'm hoping that for a brief second, my power will come back on and I can open up my business tomorrow. So people are not only losing power, they're losing income. It's not that, your bill collectors are gonna care that you weren't able to work for a few days. So the question to you is, do you think PG&E should compensate people? How do you think they should do that? And if you were PG&E, what would be your short, medium, and long-term plan to fix this problem?
Do they have the money to support it?
Well, that's a question. Are we going to raise rates?
Work for the stockholders, and so they have no money even if they wanted to, which they don't.
They don't have the money, is what you're saying. You're telling me that PG&E does not have the money.
I'm saying, well, they got rescued. Where did that come from? I mean, the bottom line is I remember being here in 1989 when we had the quake, and every window you had, thanks PG&E, thanks PG&E. I don't know how many recall that, but that was a different attitude towards them. The way they're handling this from a PR standpoint is terrible.
And then they blew up a city.
Yep, that was it.
And they haven't spent a cent on upgrading their lines since then. And maybe before.
Here.
Let me tell a short PG&E story. First of all, I was happy to come to this building today so I could flush a toilet. So exciting. I live in the country, and when you live in the country, you don't have a well if you don't have electricity, so you can't flush your toilets. Today, my son had a medical procedure at home that had been scheduled for quite some time. We have no electricity. We tried to pull it off anyway, and it went pretty well. We got the IV in, and he's getting his drugs and everything like that. And then the babysitter tripped and fell and pulled the IV out of his arm. Oh. You know what she tripped over? All the wires crisscrossing my house from my generator to try to run the damn stuff in my home. That's my life now in a first world country?
For the next 10 years.
For the next 10 years? That's unsustainable. And kids not going to school? That is not sustainable. The idea that we're going to wait 10 years for this, it's just craziness.
But Jack, you're saying it's not sustainable. What is the solution? People are like, they shouldn't turn off our power.
Warren. I just come up with solutions.
I know.
I don't need to come up with a way to get there.
I know, but that's what we need, though. I mean, what are you willing to put up with? What do you think people would put up with?
Go to the source, because let's look who's been putting people in the Public Utilities Commission. It's all easy to blame PG&E, but let's look at the politics of the last 20 years. And the people that have put these people in position now, and look, I'm a progressive, but you got Gavin Newsom screaming, and then you had Jerry Brown, and you just keep going back, and you realize you have a legislature in Sacramento that's Democrats. And to me, for us just to say that it's all PG&E, because it's easy to throw the venom. I haven't heard anybody in Sacramento or Newsom talk about the systemic problems of the PUC.
Well, Gavin Newsom replaced the head of the CPUC. He's only been there for 9 months. Jerry Brown was crooked. His sister Kathleen Brown sat on the board of Sempra Energy in Southern California.
Wait, Jerry Brown was crooked?
Yes.
He didn't,
Are you kidding?
How is he crooked?
How is he crooked? Was he
I'm going to tell you that one of the...
Was he convicted? What would he say?
No, honey. No, the politicians tend not to become convicted. It doesn't mean they're
You can
not
use
crooked.
that condescending voice.
I mean, come on, Chip.
But who's responsible for a quasi-governmental agency? Who's responsible for a quasi-governmental agency? The word government.
This is an investor-owned utility that has been sleeping with the regulatory agency
for a long time.
It is for a long time.
Who's had the oversight? The Democrats, right?
Yes. Well, we did have a couple of governors who were Republican when the energy crisis struck.
But when was the last time the legislature was Republican?
So they're sleeping. So they're sleeping with the regulatory agency and the Democrats. So it's a throuple, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think the problem here is because the CPUC was more focused on what the value of the shares were than they were on what was happening to the ratepayers. I mean, how many times have we had to pay for their misbehavior?
Which makes them different from any other corporation. How?
Exactly.
Because it's a utility and it's a monopoly. That's how.
It's a monopoly because the government made it a monopoly.
All right, so let's change it. Let's change it.
Fine, but
you want a solution? You're just spreading the blame across and you're taking it away
fairly.
from PG&E.
All right, one at a time, one at a time.
You can't take the blame away from PG&E. You can put blame in other areas, but PG&E sucks. The way they've handled this has sucked. The things that they've done, what you were saying about the way they haven't maintained those lines, that is largely what this is all about.
Just for the record, can I say something real quick?
We shouldn't have to turn off the lights because the wind is blowing.
Now I understand. Our very first meeting, the only question Pat had, so she goes, "Can I curse?" And we said, right?
The meeting about I said, since we're not broadcasting, can I swear?
Yeah. All right.
And you know what I was told? Hail no is what I was told.
All right, Mark, Joe, anybody, John, do you have anything to
I'll go ahead.
No, okay. I just want to point out,
John.
PG&E is not the enemy. And you want to know? No, I know. Somebody said yes. But you want to know how I know?
I agree.
All of us who get up every day and turn on the light count on PG&E. They failed. So the question now becomes, after we are angry at them, what do we do to reform them? And all of you know that the major issue here is the Public Utilities Commission.
So you're saying replace everybody on the PUC and it'll all go away?
No. What I'm saying is, if the PUC would do its job and regulate PG&E instead of their being in bed together,
it's gone too long, John. The PG&E has actually been charged criminally for the murders in San Bruno. PG&E has been responsible.
You can't charge a corporation with murder.
They have been charged.
You can't.
They're culpable in the homicide. I think that's what the charge actually was. And
That's
they
a
have
civil.
indeed.
And who are they going to
They
convict?
have been charged and they have been convicted. But you're taking us off point. What their penalty is, they're not going to go to prison. What the penalty is, I mean, this is a corporation who has shown itself inept and incapable of running the utility. You can get rid rid of the CPUC if you want to, but don't give PG&E a pass. We've been paying through our bills for years and years, decades. We've been paying for them to maintain the lines. We've been paying for them to modernize the lines. And every time they screw up and it costs them money because they've hurt somebody, they've caused all this damage, every time that happens, who bears the brunt of it? The ratepayers have, the shareholders have started to, but previously our bills have been going up and up and up to handle this stuff. It is outrageous, and we cannot let them get away with it for 10 years. New normal, my Aunt Franny's Fanny.
All right. That's PG&E. Apparently, we didn't come up with a solution, Brett, tonight. So, okay.
Get rid of them.
No, but that's a really good point, because everybody knows PG&E is a problem. Everybody hates PG&E. Everybody's angry about the configuration of PG&E and how, they're a for-profit organization.
And
they're
a monopoly.
essentially and a monopoly, and we know why they're a monopoly. Oftentimes with these utilities, you have to grant them a de facto monopoly to allow them to, sink this cost into laying these lines out and all the rest. And as Joe was saying, they haven't maintained the lines. The sins of PG&E are well documented. But what to do? As long as this is a company that's concerned with the bottom line and that will take that money that's supposed to be dedicated to maintenance, and it's going to pay off stockholders and bonuses to corporate heads
And throw parties.
Yeah, it's not a viable plan. So what do you do with them? I mean, I get it. We can get into. I think this is a reckoning, because something's happening with PG&E now, and the public's view toward PG&E that I think is really getting to a tipping point. You're seeing places like San Jose and San Francisco saying, no, we want to operate our own power. And that is what needs to happen in Northern California. It's happening in San Diego. You know that.
Municipalize.
Yeah,
that's the answer.
Yeah,
Take away the shareholder aspect.
If you decentralize power, then you put it in the hands of even smaller cronies. It's going to still, the problem won't change.
If the problem,
hold on, wait, let me finish. If the problem is people, you think putting it in smaller groups of people are going to improve their character?
Yes, I do. I do.
That makes there's no reason to expect.
Answerable to a smaller
Why would the
group
size of the group make a difference?
Yeah.
All right.
We eliminate the shareholders. We eliminate the profit motive.
We're not going to solve this problem tonight, Mr.
To the smaller.
Hey, one thing I'd like to throw in, I think is pretty interesting. So we're been getting some national attention for this, right? New York Times articles, Wall Street Journal articles, none of them favorable for the state of California.
Right, we're
or really
laughing
for Gavin Newsom. And I don't know if Gavin was thinking about jumping into the race. He might have been, if Biden fails or whatever. He can't now, because he'll get this whole thing laid at his feet fairly or unfairly. He'd be fighting this battle constantly if he ran for president.
So how has he screwed it up?
I think it's changed
What did he
things.
specifically do?
It doesn't make any difference. You know how that works.
So
if he runs for president,
on imaging.
on imaging. The New York Times
he's the
view of just
governor,
imaging.
and this is happening, and so it's on him because it's on his watch.
One of the problems with the right-wing media, though, especially Fox, is they like to characterize us as just a Hollywood problem. You're going to see more of video of what happened to the Getty fire than you will here at the Kincaid fire, because that's where all the stars live, and that's what they want to do. They continue to characterize this as a Hollywood elite leftist problem, when it's actually people that are on these farms that are, first of all, don't have water to start with, and are just trying to get by. That's one of the big problems we're characterized. We need federal help. This should be declared a national emergency. We had Tom Steyer on today. He said if he's elected, and this is something I agree with totally, that we should declare a national emergency here in the state of California.
Well, Donald Trump has done that today. He did do with the fires. Okay, but speaking on that, I was listening to Armstrong and Getty this morning, and you guys were talking about the polarization in this country and how it's been rising since, George W. Bush, correct?
Yeah, interesting stat in the Washington. The most polarizing president we've ever had is Donald Trump. Number two, now this is based on looking at the percentage of people in one party that like him and percentage of the people in the other party that hate him. Donald Trump, most polarizing president we've ever had. Number two in the same polling, Barack Obama. Number three, George W. Bush. We're on a trajectory.
But does that trajectory match the 24-hour news cycle? My question is the bigger problem the 24-hour news cycle? Is it the ability of news to not stop? People don't turn off the news. Breaking news, the banner stays on there all day long, even though it happened maybe at 9 o'clock in the morning. How much of a role do you think the 24-hour news cycle plays in the polarization of this country?
It's not the frequency, it's the quality. If you're running the truth 24/7, that's not a problem. But that's not happening on Fox News. With CNN,
I'm just saying, let's go back to that. You could see it immediately. Do you change the channel off of the 24-hour news cycle? I mean, we're in this business. The TV is on all the time, but we're in the business. How many of you change it off of your favorite 24-hour news cycle? And does that impact the polarization? That's the question.
You got more people watching it because there are different ways of watching it. You have people listening on the phone, got people, I mean, news conferences, so many different ways. So of course people are watching. In terms of when it's too much, when you get tired of it. If I see the same story the third time, I'm not watching it.
Well, somewhere on some channel is the Shawshank Redemption. So you can always switch to that, right?
Damn good movie.
Nikki, I just want to say that I believe that one of the reasons for the polarization is that it's difficult for people to ascertain truth. And it used to be, I mean, I have had the privilege of interviewing Walter Cronkite a couple of times prior to his death. That's the way the news used to be delivered. Walter Cronkite was the most trusted man in America, and he gave you the facts, he gave you context with the facts, he didn't short shrift it, and it was remarkable because we were fairly well informed. What's happening now, and CNN used to be a mainstay, a go-to station where you thought that it was being played straight. And I got to tell you, I watch CNN now, and I may be the most left person on the stage today, I'm not sure. But when I watch CNN and MSNBC, other than Rachel Maddow, because she brings the facts with her and she does long-form discussions, but when you're talking about CNN, I watch people who call themselves journalists, which we are not, and news anchors, giving you stories while they roll their eyes, talking with people, interviewing people, Republicans generally, while they show disgust, while the questions themselves give away exactly what their biases are. And I don't want that. I don't need somebody to think for me. What I want is the news. Give me the news. Go ahead and have analysis and have discussion of the news, but please don't call that
all right,
news.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So when Walter Cronkite finished his newscast, what did he always say?
And that's
the way it is. All right, 22 minutes. Do you really think he covered everything and that's the way it is? Every time you decide to report a story, you're showing bias. You didn't report this story, you chose this story. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but there's bias in all reporting, and it's not bad.
In the news selection, the newspapers were the ones that you would go to for in-depth journalism.
You're curating a newscast in the same way an editor curates the newspaper, and so there's a bias toward those things that you feel are most important. I guess there's that
or
bias.
You feel
if you're talking about a political
more
bias,
truth, an element of truth. That's a word we're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, I take your general point though. In 22 minutes you're not getting the whole story.
Right. We're getting away from what I think it was Jack who had said, and that's the polarization. And let's cut the crap. It's Trump. People either look at him as somebody they admire or somebody they don't. There's no in between. And the sides don't listen to each other. So consequently, of course this happens. Whether you have cable TV news, whether you're reading a newspaper, whether you're listening to KGO.
Joe Giddy probably has a follow-up, and I know the line between reporting on these 24-hour cable networks and the actual commentary is getting really blurred.
First of all, Ron, with all due respect, given what Jack said about Obama being the second and George W. Bush being the third, I think that undermines your point a little bit. And there's a hell of a lot of middle ground with Trump, a tremendous amount. He's a rude jackass, but he's finally paying heed to the manufacturing Midwest. Maybe not in the ways you choose and maybe not terribly effectively. He's actually doing something about the border situation, sometimes with ham hands and ill-considered quotes, but he's actually doing something. And so there are a hell of a lot of us that are holding our nose and hoping for the best, enjoying some of the policies, but tired of being put in a position to defend him when he acts like a jackass.
There are not a lot of Kurds who would agree
and I'm sorry, to Nikki's question just very quickly, and I've been sitting over here quietly because I don't do shouting matches. I have absolutely no interest in it. We live in the age of hyperbole, where advertising messages are over the top, where singers are over the top, where various personalities trying to get your attention.
I think this is the most hyperbolic age we've ever been in.
It's brilliant and dry. Thank you.
I get it.
And I think given the number of inputs we all take every single day, and this is a huge challenge for the industry we're in. The huge number of inputs we have, it takes a lot to break through to get your attention. And a quietly reasonable politician, while I admire them very much, they're really taking a chance. They're really making a long shot. You got to go over the top. I mean, I'm at the point now, I'm in my mid-50s, where the last half dozen elections have been the most important one of my lifetime. Every single Republican is a racist and a Nazi. Every single Democrat is a communist. And by the way,
did somebody get that on tape?
That's the quote that'll appear in the Chronicle. Pat, I want to thank you for a remarkably intellectually honest description of CNN. And it's true, and MSNBC is the same. And Sean Hannity, for those of you who are Fox News fans, Sean Hannity and Bret Baier are entirely different beasts. And so let's not generalize.
Okay.
But how many people watch Hannity and as opposed to Baier? I mean, most people don't even know the latter.
Hannity's the #1 rated cable show.
But I want to comment on the two things that Trump ran on, the economy and immigration. The economy is flat right now. It's at the Obama level, about 2.5% growth. It did have a spike after the tax hikes were announced, which was about 1/4, but then it went back down. The economy's flat. To run on the economy and to talk about bringing jobs to New West, to the Midwest.
You mean the growth is flat?
Growth is flat, yeah. Right. Basically for the last 10 years. It's been something that's concerned all economists, whether they're Keynesian or conservative. But to talk about immigration, this country, if we want to grow at a 4% rate, which is what Trump promised when he was running, we need immigration. The baby boomers, they're all retired. They're not going to work anymore. We don't have enough millennials. We need about 15 million new immigrants a year into this country to get the kind of economic growth the Republicans promised. They don't answer this, or they do when we have the head of ICE. I'm sorry, I don't remember the guy's now, what division, who said that.
Al-Baghdadi?
Pardon me?
Al-Baghdadi?
Yeah, right. When he said we want people that can stand on their own 2 feet, taking the Statue of Liberty's promise. My point is, we don't have, if we want to grow, we need immigration, and we need it bad. And we need a controlled immigration at the border. What we don't need is xenophobic comments from not just Trump, but from almost every Senate Republican, with a few.
But you understand, and everybody in the room does, that we live in a highly partisan time. That if you listen to Fox News, which I think is an oxymoron, you believe it. And if you listen to CNN, which is hardly neutral, you believe it. And the question becomes, at what point does truth matter? At what point, and that's what we're coming to now with impeachment, the question is, what is true and what is false? And can one put aside one's partisan beliefs in order to be completely objective about what's happening?
And John,
that's an easy question. No.
And on that note, Speaker,
where's the money in that?
If it's no, and you can hear the diversity of opinion, then this country will continue to go from left to right, arguing amongst itself and not solving problems.
And they'll be arguing with 30-second commercials.
But John, Thomas Jefferson called Alexander Hamilton a hermaphrodite. The difference is the minions didn't believe it. No, I don't think so.
I didn't see the play. I don't know. I didn't.
And you should have heard what Aaron Burr said.
No, my point is, today when Trump says something that insane, you have people that believe it because all they watch is a channel that won't dispute it.
Well, and also the information spreads very rapidly. We're in a different time now, and that's what we all need to admit. The 24-hour news cycle and social media and the internet makes information change very rapidly.
You guys are touching on the subject that probably is going to be the most incendiary tonight. What's that?
I have to say something.
Okay, but we have to keep them short because we need to keep it viewpoints, Ms.
It has been unsaid. It needs to be said. That when you talk about divisions, and you talk about Trump, Obama, George W. Bush. George W. Bush was president after 9/11. There were a lot of problems with where we were putting our troops and why the hell we went into Iraq when Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. War was one of the reasons. There were divisions because we weren't getting the information. We weren't getting the truth. Transparency became a thing of the past. We passed the Patriot Act. These things were beginning to quash American freedoms and people were standing up and rebelling. And Barack Obama, the nation was divided because he was black. It was racism. And I'm sorry if it offends you that I say that, but it was racism. The lack of respect that this guy received in office from people in Congress and otherwise, not for his policies, but because he was the person in the White House, is undeniable.
A black man in the White House offended people. And one of the great things about being a talk show host is not only do you get people who call you, but you get emails. And if I told you the number of emails we received, blatantly racist, it was stunning. But may I quickly just say, hate is now part of the American body politic. If you describe Donald Trump, people absolutely despise him. You describe Barack Obama, people absolutely despise him. And the day when America could elect a president who did not represent polar extremes, but rather took a centrist position, I don't know if we can go back to that.
All right. Speaker Nancy Pelosi says today that she will be bringing a vote to the full House on whether to formalize an impeachment inquiry. Here we go.
The correct thing to do.
Are we ready?
Yeah, it's the correct thing to do.
Do you think the Democrats have been hiding and doing this behind closed doors?
No, the Democrats, and let me be crystal clear about this. Republicans are represented on the committees, even the one that was stormed. What was particularly funny or sad is that some of the people who stormed the committee were members of one of those committees.
What's funny is you get a Trey Gowdy or somebody like that who will point out that when they were in office, it was different, and all they're doing is flipping it. Whatever side you're on, they're on the other side, and that's all it is.
But
it's reactive because his actions speak louder.
But you asked about impeachment, so let me be clear.
Let's get a short answer here.
What?
John Rothman, short answer, go. Let's see it.
Oxymoron. But no, let me just tell you that what we have to do now, there will be a formal inquiry. They're going to vote on Thursday. Then the House will proceed. And the question, bottom line, will be whether the president will be able and willing to be responsive and defend himself. And that's going to be the real question. Right now, one of the articles of impeachment will be obstruction of justice.
Right.
By passing what they're going to pass on Thursday, which will be a partisan vote, by the way, in the House, what it will do is to put the president in a box. He will have to respond. And 2 days ago, there was an opinion by the court which said that what the process is now is completely legal. For Donald Trump to defy the law will be very interesting if he does it.
It comes down to 20. That's the number you have to remember. Because unless you can get 20 Republican senators to vote for removal, the president can do whatever he wants with justice. We've already seen it with Barr. He can deny subpoenas. He can tell the Supreme Court to pound sand. They don't have an army. I mean, it comes down to, again, it depends on the charge and the way the Democrats lay it out. But I don't think anybody that can read the Constitution, and Trump apparently can't because there's phony emoluments. But the whole, that was bad, I'm sorry. But the idea, it takes 20 Republican senators or none of this means anything. None of it.
But they very well, there might be evidence that comes out that's totally indisputable. What do you do then? All you need is a crack. You need a little crack. You need one or two of those senators to move over, and you get your 20.
It's not going to be Cornyn.
All you have to do is remember that impeachment is not a legal process, it's a political process. The reason Richard Nixon left is because he had to, because the Republicans came to him and said goodbye. Why did Bill Clinton survive? Bill Clinton committed perjury and obstructed justice. The decision of the Senate Democrats, was it didn't rise to the level to remove him from office. Wait, one more. The argument that is being made now by Republicans, and it's very important, maybe the most important thing I'll say tonight, is Republicans are now saying, yes, Donald Trump didn't do the right thing, but it doesn't rise to the level of his being removed.
John, let me ask you a question.
Hold on. Let's go ahead and let the rest of the panelists give an answer before you guys can respond, if that's okay. Mark, Joe, Jack.
Well, getting to John's point about will we have a president ever again that commands the center left and center right, and I don't know if we will in my lifetime ever again. I just wonder if we're not going to constantly have impeachment trials. If there is a president and the opposite party has the House, I think we're just going to keep doing impeachment after impeachment with our current politics based on the polls. We'll have a
only if there are grounds. Only if there are grounds. What Donald Trump did, I always remember what Richard Nixon said. I gave them the sword and they thrust it into me. What Donald Trump did in his comments was to give them a reason.
You don't think in the current setting the Republican House would have tried to impeach Obama over, I don't know, Benghazi
They wouldn't
or
have had
something.
They wouldn't have had anywhere near the evidence that's coming out. I mean,
You
people
know,
that I know.
all you-
I was one of those people who said in the beginning, no, I don't think there should be impeachment. There's an election in November. We can do it then. Now I've moved over. How can you not? When you decide, all of a sudden you're going to take friends of ours, the Kurds, let's dump them out. We don't need them. They're disposable. I mean, really, you cannot equate the sins of Donald Trump right now with the sins of Barack Obama or Bill Clinton. And I say that not politically.
What's more important, though, Mark? Let me ask you this. What's more important, impeaching the president or winning November 3rd, 2020?
Of course, winning the next election is the most important thing. But I think great points have been made by everyone. And one of the key points was that it is a political process, the process of impeachment. I think you're dreaming. I mean, I think you're absolutely high if you think you're going to get him removed for all the reasons that have been detailed here. You're not going to get him removed. That's not what the impeachment process is. I think that we talk about it and we kind of delude ourselves into thinking, but can't everybody see it? I mean, he's denying these subpoenas and he's openly corrupt. And my God, they're clearly, these guys are going to come around and they're talking about him behind his back, the Republicans. It's just not going to happen. I think the Republican coalition is going to hold firm. But I think in stacking that cordwood to the sky of all the impeachable offenses, by the way, turning on the Kurds, an awful idea, his Syrian policy, ridiculous, but it's not impeachable per se. It's just a ridiculous policy. I think denying the subpoenas and the open corruption, I would suggest,
Ukraine.
is impeachable. I mean, more arguably impeachable. As Joe said, you can impeach for anything, you know what I mean? But
as John said, obstruction of justice. That's pretty damn simple.
Yeah, and obstruction of justice, excuse me. But in any case, that's so you can make the political case to the public. That's why those things are brought out. And that's what happened in Watergate. Eventually, the dam broke as the evidence against Nixon became public.
Yeah, but Nixon had a 25% approval rate. This guy still has a 42%. Why?
No, you've got to be careful. Remember what brought Nixon down.
No, I'm just talking about his approval rate.
I understand.
It was 25 at the time.
Nixon's approval rating before the smoking gun tape was at about 50%. Now, I'm telling you that so you understand. George H.W. Bush was chairman of the Republican Party. And he writes in his autobiography, Looking Forward, that it was about 90% of Republicans who supported Richard Nixon until the smoking gun. So here's the question, and then I'll sit back. Is there a smoking gun that will prove conclusive? No, not what you think. Because it's not what Democrats think.
No.
It's what Republicans
He enlisted foreign aid in getting dirt. That's against the law.
You don't have to convince me. But what has to happen in order for...
He admitted it.
He did on the White House lawn. But let me assure you, the Republicans will not hear that until they believe it does them damage. The Republicans told Richard Nixon goodbye when they knew that what he did was untenable. The same thing will apply to Donald Trump.
Joe Getty, I'm seeing you shaking your head. What are you thinking?
I'm just checking my watch.
Yeah,
right. The obstruction stuff is weak. It'll never stick. It just won't.
What about asking him for help from a foreign power? I mean, let me ask you actually this. Do you think that what Donald Trump has done sets a precedent for future presidents? I think that's the biggest fear someone like me has. Okay, it might not be that big of a deal to some people, but it sets a precedent. Why do we have these laws? Why do we have the emoluments clause? Why do we have the law that you're not supposed to ask aid from a foreign power if we're not going to enforce a punishment?
But you have to remember what Donald Trump said about the emoluments clause. And this is really important. This is a man who swore to uphold the Constitution who said it's phony. It's phony. If the President of the United States can deny what the Constitution says clearly, precisely, and unambiguously, and he gets away with it, we are in trouble.
There's one bottom line, Nikki. There's one bottom line that you got to say. At some point, people are going to admit one thing. There are those who feel that Donald Trump has totally misused the powers of his office, should be impeached for that. There's another percentage of people who just couldn't stand the man from the moment he walked in. I'm one of them. I acknowledge it. I admit it. But when you talk impeachment, as much as we can talk about the politics and whether emoluments were in, as much as you can do that, it's a deep down feeling that if I had a boy, I wouldn't want him to be president. If I had a girl, I wouldn't want her to be president. I wouldn't want him to have anything to do with politics. And that's the sad part. You go anywhere in the world, you're an American, you're judged by Trump. That's the gut in many people who want to see him impeached. You add that to those who have the real legitimate points, and then I think you can get it done.
Joe, you don't seem like you agree.
Well, Nikki asked like half a dozen different questions. I mean,
I want to know about precedent. What laws should we...
I just have to throw in, for Joe and I, we're never this serious about anything for this long ever in our lives. So we're kind of fish out of water because we don't get all furrow-browed and serious about things for 45 minutes at a time.
I'll push back on that, Jack, just a little bit, because when I listen to your shows in the morning, you guys are really passionate about Trump. Some things are A-okay.
For a few minutes and then jokes.
Oh, of course.
I can't be this serious this long.
But what is the president, Jack?
You know what I'm thinking?
What president should we
You know what's on my mind right now? If I don't sit up completely straight, my shirt bows open and you see my hairy navel. That's what's on my mind right now.
Sit up straight.
But I mean, at some point, these things matter. At some point, precedent matters, because if we let certain things slide, what matters then? I mean, do you think Trump is the only one that can get the policies that you like passed? Could there not be someone that could get it passed without being so offensive, so double talking out both sides of the mouth? Does it have to be Trump, or could it be a different Republican?
I would love it if there were somebody. I almost said Republican. I wouldn't call Trump a Republican because he's his own thing. But I would love it if there's a president that wanted to do what I wanted to do, less regulation, all that sort of stuff, that didn't do things on a daily basis that are impossible to defend. That'd be freaking fantastic. It hasn't happened, but it'd be awesome.
It hasn't happened since Jimmy Carter, who was the ultimate deregulator. And I wonder what you think about a Jimmy Carter-style president.
I can't get as serious as you are about anything. I just can't. I just not how I'm built. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's just not my thing.
Are we seriously going to relitigate the Carter administration?
And were we talking about failed regulation and failed regulators are one of the reasons we're in this mess right now with the entire state on fire? You know that there have been over 2,000 fires in the last several years that have been caused by utilities, and over 1,500 of those were caused by PG&E. And that's because they were in bed with the CPUC, the regulators. The regulators weren't doing their jobs. There are some things, I agree with you, there are some regulations that are stupid. There are other regulations that are utterly essential. And I want to answer Nikki's first question. And the question is, first, impeachment, and Nancy bringing it to the floor, I support. The idea of questioning behind closed doors. The rules of how the House handles impeachment are determined by the House. Those rules that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are operating under right now behind closed doors were established by the House in 2015. And it was the Republican Congress that put those rules into place. So they're playing by the rules that were established by the Republicans. They're not operating in secrecy. They're operating more like a grand jury because they don't have that benefit. And they can't count on the Department of Justice, headed by Bill Barr, to do the kind of investigations that are necessary to get to the truth.
But it was the Democrats that got rid of the independent counsel because they didn't like what happened to Clinton. Had there been an independent counsel, you would have had a real exhaustive look at what Trump is doing. I get what you guys are saying. I mean, we're in the entertainment business, and we just have we're the great fortune to have a microphone, and for all of us here, we've done it a long time. And I look at this guy, and I think about like Planned Parenthood, for example, which such a small percentage is about abortion. And I think that in these red states, when he attacks it, it hurts the people that support him. And that irony blows my mind, that you got young girls that are going there for gynecological, did I get it right, Nick? Okay, yeah. And for services, and I get it. I mean, and I totally do. I get the not being all serious, and I understand that. But I mean, the reason that this thing sold out in like 10 hours is because I think people, they're frustrated. We're all frustrated, and we're trying to figure out how we can get back, and I don't know if it's back or forward, to somebody that is not insane, that's not a sociopath, that doesn't lie 14,000 times in 3 years. I mean, there's so many people that, I think all of us
immoral.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, that's the part that bothers me. That's the part I can't make fun of.
Demagogue.
I will say one thing for a president that I admired, Bill Clinton, and I did admire him. When you talk about deregulation, Bill Clinton's the reason we're making about 25% of what we used to before.
He voted against
Bill
gay
Clinton
marriage.
is the one who opened,
the Clinton
who opened
was-
up broadcasting so that now there are like
he-
five
he
companies
was-
that own
he was
every radio
hideous.
station in the city.
He was a bad
He
guy.
did a lot of horrible things. Graham Leach Bliley, the collapse of the housing market. Put that at the feet of Bill Clinton. That's where it belongs.
Well, and that's very important. I think that that's what we underestimate is the ability to criticize the political party and the candidate or politician that is on quote unquote our side. It is the creation of politics becoming a sports team, and that anything that they do is okay because God forbid the other party is in power. Where is the compromise here? Where are you willing to compromise?
You referenced something we were talking about this morning. So there's a Washington Post article about polarization, and one of the Pew stats they gave were that somewhere between 80 and 90% of people say we're too polarized. Also, 80 to 90% say my politicians don't stand firm enough and they compromise too much.
But that's what's
So
needed.
what are you going to do with that
compromise.
information? I don't know.
Okay,
I
so
don't know
where's
what you
the
do with that.
compromise? Let me just ask you, where is the compromise on healthcare and where is the compromise on immigration? Because you can't have everything you want. You can't shut down the border. That's ridiculous. It's not, one, it's not American, and two, it's not possible. So where is the compromise? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give in? What? What's not American?
Shut down the border. We're a sovereign state.
Immigration made this country. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just saying, no, I'm not on the panel. I don't mean disrespect, but I'm just not going to argue with you. But where is the compromise? Where is the compromise? That's fine.
Hey, Goober.
That's okay. No, it's fine.
nice.
Where I'm asking the panel,
Nice.
where is the compromise on immigration? Because there has to be one. That's my point. There has to be a compromise on these hot button issues. There has to be. Someone has to give in a little. Both sides have to give in. That's the definition of a compromise. So where is it?
There was a compromise. The Gang of Eight, 4 senior Republican senators and 4 senior Democratic senators, came up with a plan on immigration, which was approved by the Senate, which the House of Representatives, controlled by the Republicans, would not even consider. And I would point out to you, as my late father would have said, it takes 2 to tango. And right now, you don't have political parties that are willing to tango.
Do you find any compromise on immigration or healthcare?
Immigration, I don't think is the best example you could use. The healthcare one's a good example for what you're just talking about. That's going to be tough to have a compromise. On immigration, I don't think it's that hard. Several of the biggest things poll very well. It's just that both parties want to keep the issue to fight about, I think. It polls very well to not close our border. Nobody wants, well, no normal person wants to do that, but secure our border. Like 80, 90% of people, according to Gallup, want to secure our border. They also want to continue to have immigration. Something like, I think it's about 2/3 of people want merit-based as opposed to family chain immigration. So a lot of these things are majority approved. I think we could do it.
So
but I
what
don't think
stops
either-
the compromise?
But I don't think either party wants to solve immigration.
But Jack, merit based is a dog whistle because we're talking about people coming over, white Europeans. That's the problem I think
Who
with
have
that.
money in their pockets.
But I do
who
agree
don't
that most
need, health
Americans want
insurance.
an orderly immigration policy, and we do, like I said before, we need people.
Did you just call my best friend and partner a racist, you piece of crap? Are you serious? First you got Rothman with his incredibly lazy, belligerent, and unfair allegation that anybody who opposes Obama is a racist. He was far to the left.
Excuse
to
me,
claim it was a
excuse me,
fine
I never said that.
Oh, you
What I
implied,
pointed out,
you
what I-
implied
excuse
that
me.
was the major.
What I pointed out,
hold on.
That
what I
was
pointed
me.
out
Hold on.
fairly.
That was me.
What I pointed out fairly.
That was me. I was the one who said that the reason, the biggest reason that I could see for the division during the Obama administration was racism. And I would point to the fact that the rallies that we saw, especially the Tea Party rallies, what were they carrying? Sock puppets. Those are little monkeys. That's a racist symbol.
Okay,
The racism that was prevalent and the way that he was treated by people in Congress, that woman in Arizona, the way she disrespected him on the tarmac. I mean, just basic issues of protocol, he was denied. And I believe he was denied it because he was a black man in the White House. Racism in the United States skyrocketed when Barack Obama was in office.
All right, let's give Joe a chance to respond. I just want to mention that we're going to take audience member questions. If you start cultivating some questions in your mind, pull me aside and we'll put you with the panel. But Joe, go ahead and respond.
John, first of all, if I spaced off so deeply that I mistook her words for yours, I apologize sincerely.
No problem. We're civilized, you know.
I spent many hours addressing Tea Party rallies, attending them, going to meetings in living rooms, etc. I never heard a single syllable about anybody's race. It was about small government. It was about government not taking over healthcare. It was about individual rights. It was constitutional originalism. It was the Second Amendment. It had nothing to do with race. Is that to say there were no racists at Tea Party meetings? No, don't be ridiculous. 10% of any audience is nut jobs. Ours,
Would we call
chips,
that a basket of deplorables?
hats, whatever. I mean, yeah,
No, they
I mean,
would say
that's just the truth.
With the exception of this group, I would hasten to point.
They would say they're good.
We have a
people on
question
both-
from Victoria.
They would turn around and say there are good people on both sides. Is that the point?
Nobody's saying all Trump supporters are racist, but everybody will say that.
Yeah, you pretty much implied
You just did.
And that's
You
when
just
I,
did.
That's when I checked
No,
out.
I said the
I
phrase.
didn't say Trump
You just
supporters.
did.
Hey,
Hold on. One at a
That
time.
ends the conversation. Once people feel like they've been called racist, the conversation is over. There's
Checking
no point
out.
in talking.
Well, can I go back to what I said? I said the term merit-based, which is not your term, right?
It's absolutely my term. The term I use and I would agree
Well,
with.
it's-
and so would other Trump supporters, and we don't feel like it's racist, and you called us racist,
Well,
and so
that's-
that ends the conversation.
All right, and we have a, hold on, Chip, hold on. We have a
Let me
comment.
phrase it a little bit differently.
I didn't
Instead
call
of
you
merit-based, because sometimes your merit can't be determined just by where you're from. Some people hear merit-based and they think, you're white, you're from a first world country. What if I'm from, Somalia and I've worked my ass off to do something, but because I'm from an S-hole country, you're not going to look at me because my merit doesn't fit into your box. You could understand
Am I
that could
debating
happen.
you or him?
That's not a question. That's an editorial, as most of your questions have been.
Absolutely. No, what is a merit to you? Define merit-based.
Providing a skill that we
Like
need
what?
in the country.
Like what?
Well, like if we need a certain kind of agricultural work, then we would need those people. If we need computer work, we need those people. If we need people
So
with...
if agricultural work
E-Verify.
comes from a country that is largely brown, or as Trump would say, an S-hole
then
country,
I don't care.
Okay, so who's determining
Immaterial.
the merits? That's all. I think there's a concern over who determines what is merit.
I think you two are assuming it's racist, and I wasn't, as well as going on there.
All right, I got a listener
And
question from Victoria in the back of the room that is related to this particular topic too.
Hello.
This is the least enjoyable radio event I've ever done in my entire 35-year career. It really is.
Then we must have
I've never
succeeded.
been. I got up here assuming people were going to be, good-natured about it and maybe some good-natured jabbing. But you start in with the whole Tea Party thing is racist, and where do you go from there? There's
All right,
no
Jeff.
place to go with the conversation from there. So you
Let
either
me
got to
hasten
shut
to
up
point out-
or engage in that
Let me-
conversation.
Hold on. We want to make sure we get.
Let's get the question. Let's get the
I
question.
I want to be clear, I have never called the Tea Party movement racist.
I'm talking about Pat
hold on. Nor have I said that all people who support Donald Trump are racists.
Okay, John, thank
And
you.
I don't-
Victoria has a follow-up question
Okay.
with regards to immigration in your military background as well.
It's actually not immigration. It's from the deterioration of the believing in our leaders. So I was in the Army at 9/11. We went and responded to the events at hand. It was unfortunate. We didn't all agree with going in. Some of us did. We all went and did what we should do. Obama came in and he pretty much said, we're sorry for doing what we did. That wasn't racist. That was an insult to what we went and did and how we went and supported our country and went and fought for them. It was not racist. Trump has come in and he's a wee bit of an asshat. We all agree, not a wee, a lot of an asshat.
Thank you, Victoria.
I'm not done. He sucks. I don't like him from any level of foreign policy, anything else. Do I agree with some of the things he does in action, not in talking about it or his delivery? Yes, but he is a total idiot when it comes to actual management leadership. Yet then you get aligned in and you say you're a complete asshole, everything else. Yet we also align with the left on many things. So how do we bridge that divide when we are not racist, we're not assholes, we all want the country to get along, yet we're seen as racist and bigots?
Thank you, Victoria.
Can I say, first of all, I appreciate the fact that you served. I did too. I'm an Army veteran, and I think that duty to country is essential to a country's survival. I think that we don't have enough volunteers. Excuse me, let me say that differently. But when we became an all-volunteer Army, I believe to the bottom of my soul that we don't have enough skin in the game for all Americans. And I always opposed the draft, and now I have changed my mind, because I do think that when you have a draft, it makes all of us care more about military interventions, how long we're going to stay there, what the mission is, what is really behind it, what are the politics behind it, and what do we want to get out of it. I'm the one who brought up racism in this discussion. It was not to say that all Republicans are racists. Obviously, they're not. I've voted for Republicans in the past. Of course, all Republicans are not racists. I was talking about the Obama administration. I was on the air during the Obama administration. I had plenty of criticisms of his policies. But I never carried a sock puppet. I never carried those signs, the signs that were so incredibly racist. And I did get emails constantly about Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, and she was a gorilla, and he was this, that, and the other thing, and the N-word went crazy. And if you look at the numbers of racist attacks that took place during the Obama administration, the Southern Poverty Law Center keeps track of that. The numbers of those incidents skyrocketed during that presidency. And those were attacks not by blacks against other races, but by whites against blacks.
All right, thank you, Pat. We have another listener quote. Go ahead, Joe.
Brief counterpoint. The Southern Poverty Law Center is a joke. They consider anybody to the right of Mitt Romney a hate group. They did absolutely wonderful and admirable things in the past, but they've become primarily just a hardcore.
Well, challenge the statistics, rather than maybe what their politics are.
I was mid-sentence, my dear.
Please don't call me my dear. We don't know each other well enough for that.
Okay.
All right, then.
Okay, let Joe finish. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say they become an aggressive fundraising organization that depends on terrifying everyone to raise money. They consider anybody who believes in traditional marriage, and by the way, I'm a gay rights guy. They believe anybody who defends traditional marriage is a hate group. I think that's a ridiculous thing to say, especially given the fact that both Hillary and Barack and Obama in 2008 said, no, marriage is between a man and a woman. Now, granted, that was just politics because the polls hadn't passed 50% yet. But to assert that anybody who still thinks, yeah, I'm kind of into the Bible and I think it's a man and a woman is a hate group, it's ridiculous.
All right, Taylor has a question. He's a listener and a fan from the East Bay. Taylor?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson? Hey, how do you feel about calling people in the audience goobers?
No, that was me, dude.
I never call anybody a goober.
Okay.
You know what? I got it wrong. Better yet, Chip, how do you feel?
Thank you. That's how I lose audience, though, just that way. Hey, Mark Thompson.
Sorry, Mark. You know
how dare you?
I finally got one. I apologize.
Okay,
Man of my word. I apologize. I just want to know how Chip feels about attacking people.
Well,
we're all here together, and yet you're playing the same game. You
want me to answer the question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, though she doesn't need it, Nikki is a partner of mine on the air, and when you attack her, you attack me. So, go ahead. What?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
We'll roll the tape. Right?
No, it's fine.
I'm just telling you. So this is. Yeah, you said that we were a sovereign state, and you said no. You said
you can't cross a border if you're a sovereign state.
Do you want me to answer you?
Yes.
Okay.
You can't deny that fact. If you're sovereign, you can't cross the border unless you follow the law.
Okay. Do you know where you're sitting?
I don't care about people crossing the border. I work as a gardener. You know what? it's still, you can't play the game unless you want to play it right.
Okay, I think I get the point. Okay, all right. Do you realize where you're sitting now when my great-grandfather was alive is Mexico, right? Do you realize how we took Mexico? Do you realize the people that we brought over and built this country? We built it, it was broken, and we're struggling to get it back to a position where everybody has equal access to the laws that we cherish, that the right, and you guys, you wave your flag and you talk about America and you sing the national anthem, but it's not a level playing field. We're not. We're not all together in this. No, we're not. Go to Flint. They still don't have clean water there. Go to any inner city. Go to Oakland and look at the schools. You think they're the same?
That's the problem.
Deep state. Okay, man.
Okay, let's switch gears. Let's just okay, Chip. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk.
Your time's up.
Let's get another listener question. Okay, let's ask another listener question. Are you ready?
I'm sorry, Chip, to pick on you, but you did say that one of the reasons we need immigration is because we need to get up to 4% productivity.
Growth.
And I'm all for immigration, but how much does 99% of us get of that productivity, of that growth? We get this much.
I'm not sure to what you're referring. I just know that the country, the growth of the country is dependent on having a strong workforce.
Right, but how much?
And we're all growing old.
Are you referring to like CEOs and how much they make?
It's about wealth, access to wealth. Is that what you're talking about? Oh,
productivity.
Yeah.
Growth.
Productivity is
wealth.
Is the
how
nation.
much of that wealth do we get?
Let me say, you can quote, Adam Smith and the others that talk about the invisible hand and, how the rising tide lifts everyone. That's the point I just made with this gentleman over there, that if you really want to have equality, everybody has to have equal access to it. And you don't get that without economic growth. You don't, right?
We're not getting it with the growth.
I don't understand, but my point is we still have to grow, right? So you're off on a different tangent. I'm saying we have to grow. Our economy has to grow, right? So we need people to work. That's all.
All right, we got John from Livermore who has a question for the panelists.
So I think it's a comment. The whole thing about merit-based is if you can come here and not be a drag, that is the measure of merit. Not the color, not the nation you're from, whether it be an S-hole country or a European country. It's a measure of whether you can be an addition to our society and not be draining from it. And as the illegals that are coming in currently are doing.
If you want to watch everybody but Jack and Joe dump on me, I will say something, and that is, there is nothing wrong with saying you can come to this country, but you're not going to get free health care, you're not going to get free education, you're not going to get it for free because somebody's got to pay it, and it's the people who pay the taxes.
What's your name?
Mike. You couldn't get the nomination with that view, could you?
No.
No, that's interesting.
Neither party.
All right, Mike has
Neither party, right?
Mike has a question for the panelists.
It was stated that there is no solution to the PG&E issue. I think there is. I think that it's going to hurt us. We're going to have to struggle, but we need to make energy a cottage industry. Each home has to have its own energy supporting itself. Each business has to have its own energy. We have the technology. It takes an infrastructure change that is going to be difficult for us, and it's going to require we do something besides get out of bed in the morning.
I agree with you 100%.
But how do you get the big oil companies and big energy to come along? Somebody's got to get them.
Sometimes the people lead and then they jump in front and pretend that they were leading us all along. We're going to have to do. We can wait for oil companies to help us on this. Oil companies have been screwing us forever. No, I agree with you, and you can. Every single home, every single business can become a power plant. Essentially. If there are areas that can, for whatever reason, there may be okay. If the rest of us are, then we can feed that energy into a way that we can get it to other people. And in the meantime, all of the energy sources, one of the problems we have is in San Francisco, for example, we're transmitting energy from 200 miles away. And so lines going across, high voltage lines going across that much land, inevitably there are going to be problems. And when you've got a company that has been as negligent as PG&E has, there are going to be horrific problems, and we are seeing the results of that.
But the one thing that you are getting right now is an inflection moment that is going to incentivize all of us to look into solar. We're talking, I've seen more people talking about solar than I've ever seen before. Why? Because we know the failings of this utility. I absolutely think that this is going to be a sea change in the way we look at energy moving forward. And it's going to be political, and I think it's going to also involve alternative energy.
Imagine the San Francisco Board of Supervisors running an energy company. I mean, that's basically what you're dealing with.
All right, point taken. Gordon has a follow-up question on the utility issue.
So with regards to PG&E, you on the panel have in one breath kind of laid the blame at the feet of PG&E exclusively, and in follow-on statements said that the Utilities Commission has been essentially negligent for a long time. So how can you exactly defend the need to get rid of, or defend the statement that PG&E is solely to blame, when the regulatory committee for so long has essentially been going to PG&E and say, tell us what you want us to, what standard you want us to hold us to?
You're right. I would never put the entire blame at the feet of PG&E. I think there are politics that are involved. I think also there's the CPUC. But what I don't want to see is letting PG&E off the hook. They are required by law to perform this maintenance that we were discussing earlier, and to modernize these lines. And we as ratepayers have been paying for it for decades.
And Pat, he wanted Joe to answer as well. Joe, did you?
I apologize. I didn't know that.
Quite all right. Virtually every aspect of PG&E's operation is regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, including their level of profit. To say that they've been taking profit shamelessly all these years is, perhaps accurate, but it's all been approved by the utterly crooked PUC. PG&E spends hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying. Who do you suppose gets that money, and what do you suppose they think when they get it? Are you kidding? They've been mandated to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, going on $1 billion over the last couple of years, on various green energy initiatives, which, again, is fine. Maybe you're for it, maybe you're kind of for it, maybe you're against it. But while the PUC has been mandating those expenditures, the PUC sees the big financial picture for PG&E. They say, we're mandating that, and we're allowing that much profit. And if PG&E comes and says, well, then we can't maintain the lines, the PUC has said, that's okay, for the last several years. You combine that with the mismanagement of the forests in the western United States over the last several years because the environmental wackadoos, and I'm not talking about mainstream, good-hearted people who want the air and the water to be clean. God bless you, I'm with you. We're talking about the people who went crazy over spotted owls and refused to allow the thinning of the forests. You've got all those things working together, and the defoliants and the rest of it. To let the Public Utilities Commission off the hook, or even to say, PG&E is going to be what they are if they can get away with it. If they can get away with it. We have a brave commission of people that's supposed to be looking out for our interests. How do you think they've done? Yeah, me too.
But wait a second. That's such an easy thing when you talk about the spotted owl or smelt. Because we're losing bees as well, and birds are becoming, many species are becoming extinct. There is a canary in a coal mine effect happening here. So to belittle an environment, a very intelligent professor of science or whomever are behind the environmental movement, the very smart minds, to say that it's simply a trick or, hello, is Joe running this thing? Anyway, to say that's simply a trick and to dismiss them as kooks.
I don't recall saying anything near that.
Well, you did. You belittled them when you said the spotted owl. Did you not?
that was a major moment.
I understand, but again, I'm talking about species that are being threatened, especially now with an EPA that is being given to people that have absolutely no interest at all in the environment, unless the environment, if you're talking about their pocket. This administration the executive branch is only 50% filled in key positions.
What does this have to do with forestry?
Yeah, exactly. They're in charge of the government. What are you talking about? Of course, that's everything to do with it.
All right. It looks
and
like
let me just offer one quick point. PG&E should be forbidden to contribute to political campaigns. Period.
Amen.
No argument with that.
Can I jump on you on the forestry aspect, because you're 1,000% right. And it has been terribly mismanaged.
He's a racist, but he's right about this.
I don't think I called him
Never
racist.
forget.
I'm pretty sure I didn't, unless he's got a sock puppet in his lapel pocket. I will say that I've had a chance to talk with people with the Forestry Service. They have drastically changed the way they're going about forest management now. I mean, they've made a mess. And so that's one of the reasons we're in the condition that we're in. There's no question about it. But they have finally made recognition of that, and they are trying to do things to change that within the Forestry Service. I mean, even Smokey Bear has been coming under attack lately for what Smokey Bear was promoting all these years. So
he's a talking bear. I mean, that's unnatural.
And he wears no shirt. You're going to trust that guy?
Oh, that's
all right, let's bring in a new topic. And again, Nikki and I will be roaming around.
If you have questions, just raise your hand.
If you have questions. This one's a local story that took national headlines. Washington High School. We're talking about the mural designed to reflect the life of its namesake. Leaders have voted to cover it after students and parents complained that it showed offensive things about slavery and the murder of an American Indian. Did leaders do the right thing? And
let me jump in. Many of you know I'm the president of the Washington High School Alumni Association and have been for 45 years. We're the ones bringing the lawsuit. So let me quickly tell you, Arnautoff, the artist, was a communist. He didn't want the life of George Washington sanitized. The reason there's slavery depicted, the reason there's dead Indian depicted, is because he wanted people to understand that George Washington wasn't perfect. The idea that art should be subverted and that, frankly, it should be erased is wrong. And so at Washington High School, we're battling.
That is so correct.
Oh, one more thing, just so you know it. Everyone in San Francisco, left and right, and I say everyone, when I say everyone from a Matt Gonzalez on the left to a Quentin Kopp on the right, to the NAACP, to Native American organizations, every single person we deal with has said, save the murals and do an educational job.
So you probably know, you've probably talked to these people. So who was behind covering it up originally? I mean, what was that crowd?
No, I will tell you.
What was their ideology?
There are a couple of people, and I'm saying two in particular, who organized the entire effort because they say that when their children walk down the hall and see these images, it is offensive.
The images of the slaves or the images of George Washington?
Okay, you know, it's very interesting. There was a move to change the name of George Washington High School. My answer was, the minute Washington, D.C. changes its name, Washington State changes its name, and the minute they blow up the Washington Monument, talk to me about changing the name.
Maybe they're going to make it Get a Life High School. I mean, at that point, what you're saying is absolutely correct.
If I can answer your question a little more fully, there were a couple of people who considered themselves activists who began the movement. They can't make the decision on their own. They got things so heated up that they convinced the school board. And the school board went into the meeting where they were supposed to be hearing the truth, hearing representations, testimony from different sides, wearing T-shirts that were, what was it, remove the mural?
I want you all to know that I was called.
It's astonishing. So the school board should also be recalled.
I was called a white supremacist.
It's uncomfortable, isn't it?
Many things.
It's amazing how quickly discussions go sideways when that sort of crap happens, isn't it?
But can I just, because I know we want to put a wrap on it. I tried, and we will continue to try, to sit down with those people, because our goal is to create an educational curriculum incorporating the murals and letting people know why some people are offended, what the murals meant. We are working on that intensively, and we hope that the murals will exist for many, many years to come. By the way, you saw on the stairs, you saw the Diego Rivera mural here in the City Club. Can you imagine erasing a work of art like that? If you erase art, you are erasing history.
Hey, John. Thoroughly correct. And I just got a call from Vegas. They said 1,000 to 1. That's the odds of one of the people that you're going to sit down and try and convince. That's the odds of them changing their mind.
All right, Ron, let's get to Joe. You sound like you want to.
I was just going to say, how are you feeling about it? Are you feeling like the mural is going to be saved at this point, or?
Well, the school board has already backed down to a degree. They're not erasing the murals. They want to cover the murals. Okay. That's not an acceptable situation.
Pasties.
The board has called it a compromise. It's no compromise. I can assure you, if you can get all of us on this panel to agree on one thing, it is that the murals should be saved and used educationally. And thank you.
All right, so we're getting to the end here. So if you were going to run for president, what would you say to get a person's vote? Ron, I'll start with you.
I wouldn't run for president.
If you were, sir.
If I were running for president to get a person's vote,
what are the biggest issues that you would?
I would have them answer one question. Do you want to elect me because this is my philosophy and I'll follow it through when I'm in Washington? Or do you simply want somebody who's going to think things out very carefully? If they want the latter, I'd run. If they wanted the former, I wouldn't.
And I would answer, I'm not a liberal or a conservative. I'm a pragmatist. I want to solve problems. Elect John Rothman president, and that's what you get.
I'd say vote for Nicky Maduro.
I second the motion.
I might concur with that. I don't know. If I were to pick an issue, there's so many, but I kind of was inspired by you. And I think that if we, I think somebody should be courageous and should make part of their platform bringing back the draft for the right reasons. And I think maybe that's what I would do.
Bringing back the draft is not going to get you votes, but I'm with you. I'm just saying it's not it's not going to. You get what I'm saying. But it's a really great question, and I'll try to be brief. You know, the great thing that Donald Trump did was he had a populist message, and he delivered it in this coarse way. But it was really a populist message. Now, it might have been full of BS, and it might have, not delivered on a lot of stuff. And we talk about, he spoke to the industrial Midwest, and he made these promises. And I don't know, we can talk about whether those promises ever came to pass. But he was making the right promises to the right people. And you look at the field now on the Democratic side, there is also a populist message with Elizabeth Warren. Bernie Sanders is a populist message. Again, you might think it's crazy, you might think he's a commie, you might think there's no way you can do it, but the message is a populist message. I believe now, especially with the separation of the haves and have-nots in America being what it is, I think a populist message is what needs to be communicated, and that will ultimately win. So I would get together with all my best people, come up with some BS populist message, and I'll put that out there. Yeah.
Good job, yeah. Mark
and I'll see you in November.
He's the pragmatist. How many of you have been to Washington, D.C. in the last, say, 10 years? Okay. The monuments are gorgeous. It's a wonderful town in a lot of ways, all sorts of energy, a bunch of overachievers jogging around the National Mall. Was anybody else struck by the enormity of the federal government? The blocks and blocks and blocks of beautiful buildings full of lobbyists, the ring of suburbs that you'd have to be a San Franciscan to be able to afford a house there. I would aggressively shrink the federal government. For a couple of reasons. Number one, your tax dollars could flow to your state and your local governments and do more good. Secondly, the mechanisms of government have gotten so bloated that a lot of progressive causes are starved for cash. The mechanisms we've made to deliver those ideas are so incredibly bloated at this point, the people at the receiving end don't get anything. So I would shrink government in the name of some conservative issues, but mental health care as well. And for the truly needy, the mentally handicapped, people who can't take care of themselves physically or mentally, I want there to be plenty of services for them. Lots and lots and lots. There's plenty of money. It's just flowing to K Street and not Main Street.
Just to be sure I know what you're talking about, though, you're saying in that case, you're going to take the money from the federal government, give it to the states, and let Gavin Newsom and the people that are all in, what do you call it, California?
Corruptifornia, Cal Unicornia,
you want them to make the decision?
Calizuela. Gavin Newsom, well, and listen, at the risk of going too long, the fascination with Washington, D.C. and the presidency as the saviors to our problems is ridiculous. It's misplaced. It's misguided.
You obviously have never been to Alabama or Mississippi or these states that depend entirely on federal money to stay afloat without the federal government.
Making his presidential
I know. I'm
You know,
sorry.
hey, pander to your audience when I'm not on stage, all right? I'm not into
pandering
shouting.
any, man. It's the truth.
Oh, my God.
It's the truth.
All right.
Spectacular levels of pandering. A state government's going to be more responsive than a federal government. The more local you get, the more responsive it gets. Are there bad state governments? Of course there are. They're bad governments, mostly.
So if I'm running for president, I just do a poll, I ask you what you want, you tell me, I say I'll give you 2 of those and it's gonna be free! And I win 4 terms in a row.
That's He's the new Hitler.
Ding!
I have heard you guys discuss BART a lot on your show in the morning. Busking has been a thing for years on the New York subway system. But for some reason, it's only just recently becoming a thing on BART. And now they are trying to consider possibly banning busking on BART, where people actually do some entertainment, and in exchange, the BART passengers are supposed to give you a tip. They're running into some flack from the Civil Liberties Union, and I wanted to get your feeling about busking and whether you think it's considered panhandling, and whether it should be allowed on BART.
It's better than the guy saying, give me your change.
Yeah, you get a little entertainment in exchange?
A little entertainment. I mean, I don't have any problem with it. If they don't force you to contribute, you can look, enjoy their show, and give them nothing. Yes. Not much, but I do. I acknowledge not much.
So is it panhandling if you're entertaining?
I hate it, but I think that there's a place for it outside the area where people are actually paying to use the transit system. They're not part of the transit system. They're annoying the passengers, and I think they should be kept outside of the turnstiles.
That's a pretty interesting response from this crowd that you're annoyed by this and you don't want it to go on. Because I think constitutionally, I don't see what we can do about panhandling, but who's not bothered by this? As we often talk about, there's an implied threat when somebody you don't know, who oftentimes looks drunk or crazy, walks toward you. You don't know what you're about to deal with. And my family ended up dealing with a guy who threatened to kill us and rape my children in front of me. And thankfully, some people came to my aid and we were able to get that guy out of there, and he's now in prison, and he's going to be for a long time. But he was coming toward me, asking for money with that crazed look in his eye that a lot of people do. We've got to come up with a way to deal with this so we aren't just trapped sitting there hoping nothing bad happens.
That all happened on BART?
It happened on a patio at a restaurant. But it's the same sort of situation. We have to figure out how to deal with this.
It's frightening.
Aggressive panhandling is different than busking. I mean, I agree with you.
Well, aggressive panhandling gives you nothing. They just demand money.
Right, and I don't know anybody who's for that.
If this guy had spun 3 plates before he threatened to kill my family,
at least you would be busking then, yes.
Okay, real quick, speaking of entertainment here, Halloween is coming up, and one of the popular things to do, and you'll see it online, is people recreating the Thriller dance, right? So they'll do these flash mobs, but given the news about Michael Jackson and other artists that have been caught in scandals or accused of being caught in sex scandals or molestation scandals, my question to the panel is, can you separate the art from the artist? Are you able to listen to the music of people or movies or fill in the blank of people that are accused or convicted of crimes and still enjoy them, or do you completely block it off? If there's a Thriller flash mob, do you cover your eyes and you're like, I cannot do it, I can't?
I don't know if anybody goes to the California State Fair in Sacramento, but for years now, long after we've known about Michael Jackson, they have a whole bunch of kids rides that used to be at Neverland Ranch. And they have a sign there displayed there that's supposed to be an appealing thing for your kids, I guess, to ride the rides that Michael Jackson used to lure sex things, kids.
Well, yeah, you're not riding all the rides because he's not around anymore.
Mark
I've got
was
a very direct answer to your question.
But can you draw the curtain? I don't know. I'm not. I think it's an interesting question. I think I'm not turned off by seeing the Thriller dance. Was that what it's called?
Yeah. I mean, just hearing the song or whatever, or watching a fill-in-the-blank movie by an artist or a director that's been accused of something.
The answer is absolutely yes. One may nothing to do with the other. It's what happens between the lines. Absolutely yes, except for Mel Gibson.
Except for Mel Gibson. Okay.
You know, that's
And
the beauty.
maybe Burt Reynolds.
That's the beauty. That's the beauty of choice. You have a choice. I have a choice as to who we listen to, who we watch.
And what's yours, John?
I'll tell you, to be very honest with you, I'm slightly puritanical. So I don't like anything violent. I don't like anything sexually explicit. And I'm very proud of that fact. And our children were raised the same way. So they listen now more critically because we discussed it. But understand, it's the same thing when you're writing BART or any transit system anywhere in the world. You're writing it to get on that bus or transit system to get where you're going. And you can either participate in a performance or you can ignore a performance. I can either choose to see a movie or not see a movie, turn on a television or not turn on a television, or listen to a particular radio talk show host or not.
I think that's a great
Jackson.
place to stop right there. I think John said it all. He said you have a choice of what to listen to or what to watch. And I thank you all for listening to KGO. How about a round of applause for our entire panel? So I want to thank you all for coming tonight. As you can tell, there was a few disagreements. They will all be taking a shower when they're done and toweling off after this. But I think the disagreements that they had here tonight is what makes KGO the station that it is, because we're not all going to agree on everything. And that's the beauty of what talk radio is about, is because KGO is a place where you can come and share your opinions. And that's what we encourage. That's what we encourage. And our slogan is, if you're talking about it, we're talking about it. And if it's in the news, we want you to call. So we appreciate your coming. We appreciate you listening, whether you listen to Armstrong and Getty in the morning or John at night before you go to bed. We encourage your participation. How many of you follow us on Twitter? How many of you follow us on Twitter? I need more hands than that. Go home. Okay, you're getting charged double. We have your credit card. We know where you live. Go home. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, but listen to the station. Get involved. Tell your friends we're here, because that's what it's all about. Okay? How about one more time? How about a standing ovation for this esteemed panel up here? And we thank you. Joe, Jack, Mark, Pat, Chip, John, thank you very much for everything.
Brett and Nikki.
And an extra round of applause for our two moderators, Brett Burkhart and Nikki Maduro over there. Thank you very much. Keep listening to the radio. We'll let you know when the next debate is, okay? Thank you so much. Have a great night and drive home safely.